Okay, so as we talk about little girls' hair and little boys, we're going to talk about both. We want to think about how that hair changes. The first thing we know is that at a certain age, at birth, the little girl or little boy will have a certain type of hair. Mostly it's type and, well, it's also texture. So let's make sure we know what type and texture. I just want to remind you of things I've said over and over. Type means shape, texture means the size of the strand. So the type of hair and the texture of hair is going to change from birth, even as they leave the hospital. Then, and there are reasons why, and we want to put a pin in that and then come back to those reasons as more people sign in. The other thing is when they get a toddler, then we find their texture and type seems to change. And then we find as they become tweens and tweens, toddlers, teens, there's this transition time. And so you find things happening different with the hair as far as it seems drier, it seems those problems. And there are reasons. So we're going to go into that. And then teens, that's when we're finding that the hair is going to begin to mature. It's going to mature and it's getting to the point where this is the hair they'll have and texture and type now and for years to come, usually through the rest of their life. The good news about our little girls and little boys, and little girls more so than boys, I think most people care about that part. And let me tell you why I said that, is the hair grows faster when they're in their teens and younger. Now, with little boys, you don't really want their hair to grow too fast unless some want to have length to their boys' hair, especially if you're cutting it, you don't want that amount of speed. So we're going to go through each one of those stages, and then we're going to start talking about how to get length to our little girl's hair and little boy if we want length. How to get, and we're going to focus on little girls today. And if you have a question about a little boy, feel free to ask. But how do we get length? How does the scalp and the health of the scalp affect those things? And again, keep in mind, you'll hear some of the same things that I said that you need to do. You'll hear with the same things with your daughters and your nieces, your nieces and your granddaughters. Okay, so let's get to a couple of questions. It said, is it good to leave braids in a child's head on child's head for a month without shampooing? And the other one is it good to leave braids in child's hair? It's the same thing. Okay, so no, of course not. Of everything that you've learned so far throughout this process of these 4+ weeks of series of hair talk sessions, says that you cannot, number one, you have to shampoo, and you have to shampoo on an as needed basis. It's really, really important. The other piece is braids. Leaving the braids in for a month are okay, and this is a two-part. I'm going to answer it in two parts. Leaving the braids in for a month or more, it's fine as long as you're following what we call a braid program. And we have those online, and you can order the braid program. Make sure you fill out the questionnaire and let me know this is for a child. And that way I can tweak it to fit your child's hair. But we also have links on caring for little girls of color and their hair. So I'm going to put that up, and I may put it up a couple of times so that you will have this. And we have a entire page on our site for little girls. So it's one for little boys and one for little girls of color. So let's go to the page for children, and I'm going to put that link here, and that link Here we go. For everyone. Here we go. So that's the link. If you click on that link, you can go right to that page, and it talks about little girls and little boys of color. And we got to, some of the things I'll read from the page. Many parents desire to give their children the cutest styles, but must be careful not to damage their hair and scalp in the process. And that's really, really something I want to remind you of. We're going to go through some of the things that are on the site, and then we're going to determine how and what applies to you. Okay, the next one of the next questions is how to treat toddlers' hair when they have two different textures. Now we want to make sure that we are on the same page as it relates to textures. Okay, texture deals with the size of the strand on your toddler's hair, whether that strand is small, medium, or large. In other words, fine, medium, or coarse. So the size. So if they have thick hair, now I don't mean dense necessarily, but thick. And dense mean they have a lot of hairs per square inch. We can barely see their scalp because the hair is so dense in terms of the hairs per square inch are larger in numbers. You may mean type. We just want to make sure we clarify that. Type, you can have multiple textures and multiple types of hair throughout the head. But basically, the way you deal with whether it's texture or type, you focus on the most dominant type. And the most dominant type is going to be the type that's extremely kinky. That means if you have an area where the type of hair, you have medium degree of kinkiness, and then you have slight degree of kinkiness, but you have extreme, that's the area that's going to control, because every type of hair has a certain amount of maintenance based on what is needed, what style you're trying to achieve. In other words, if you have a type of hair that's extremely kinky, it's going to tangle easily. There's going to be, you're going to find dehydration because the strands are spiral. And what happens, you don't get that even distribution and product placement. So the parts of the strand will be dry, parts of the strand won't be. So that's going to be important for you to keep that in mind. So what you do is you focus on making sure that you get even distribution, product placement on that particular area that's extremely spiral. The other areas, if it's slightly a slight wave pattern, or if it's a when I say slight wave pattern, it could be a medium wave pattern. Those areas you could almost rub your products. You'll still need vitamins, a leave-in conditioner. You'll still need your Moisture Plus, and you'll still need your oil sheen to seal. But you will find you can rub those in your hand and rub through that medium and slightly degree of kinkiness here. And you think about textures, when you think about types rather, the kinky, the slight kinky, and then the medium degree of kinkiness, that means they're spiral, then you're just trying to get control with these products, leave-in products. You also want to have the care factor and consider that, but you're trying to get more control over the hair. So with that, you want to use the products to support the control as it relates to the style and managing the hair, manageability. So with that, make sure you're speaking of type, and if you're speaking of type, then you want to focus on the most dominant type, the ones that's the hardest to challenge, and that will be the extreme kinkiness of hair. Okay, all right, and I just put the website up there for children, for little girls of color. The next question is, how can I treat my toddler's hair in the back because it's short and help it to grow? What we find with toddlers and infants, we find that they have something called friction breakage and friction alopecia. Friction means like when they're in the bed, a lot of them sleep straight on their back. I never understood how my children did that, but they hands just like this, lay it back. So cute. I miss that. My children are grown now, very, very grown. But anyways, when they do that, a lot of times they turn to the right and they turn to the left and they turn to the right, and they're consistently doing that in the course of the night. And that they're rubbing the shaft, the hair strand. When they do that, you will find very short hair in that area. Now, there's several reasons, and I'm going to talk about a couple of them. The first one, I mentioned the friction, so they're rubbing that hair. And then, but the way you care for that and obtain length is the same. Now, the other one is because the hair type is so extremely kinky that you're not getting even distribution and product placement. So therefore that hair is not getting, each strand is not getting what it needs. So how do we address these? The first thing with the friction, there's a couple of things I would recommend that, and you can have these made, you have a couple of options with this, with the friction alopecia or friction breakage. You can either have this made, you can have a little bonnet that you, and I say bonnet, understand, I don't mean a band bonnet, I mean just a little hat that fits on their head, and you just put one little tie on the neck underneath the chin, and they sleep in that. If you feel this is not a toddler that sleeps, will lay, this would be a problem, then you can put a high thread count or have some little satin sheets made for them. And so when they lay down on that area, they are rubbing into that smooth fabric. Because the hair is, because keep in mind, hair is a thread-like fiber. It's just like thread, but it's filled with keratin. So it's a little bit different. So what happens when your thread rubs against thread, thread-like fiber rubs against thread, what's in your sheets, that's going to determine, and most sheets, bed sheets for children are cotton, that's going to determine if your that hair rubs into something rough and dry, or if that hair rubs into something that is smoother. So that's one thing. If that hair is extremely kinky, you may not be getting product placement and even distribution. If you're not getting that, then you're going to miss some areas, and when you try and comb it or try to style it or try to manage that hair in that area, then you're going to pull and break. So what happens is that you put microscopic tears, and then you lose elasticity. And whenever you lose elasticity and those tears are there, then you're going to find yourself with poor porosity, same things that we would experience if it was on our own head. That breakage will occur, but it's friction breakage. So it's happening because you're doing too much rubbing or pulling, friction and traction, or they're rubbing against the fabrics. So that's simply the reason. Now, what do you do about these things? It's the same as if, you've heard me speak about our own hair. You have to make sure, depending on the length, and my toddlers, when they were babies and toddlers, they had this really short hair. And any of you know my children, my twins, they have very long hair. And so what I found is that when I was able to keep those strands hydrated, now some parents do not want to do this because they're concerned about it staining their bed sheets. But I smoothed a small amount of moisture, didn't have any problems with stains. They washed right away on the back of their head every night before they went to bed. And I saw less hair on the sheet, and they didn't rub their hair out. So there's several ways. And then before I knew it, the hair got longer and longer. We have products that we could recommend, that we recommend for adults. Ian's is one of them. It's where you apply, it's a product that's similar to, it has a sticky consistency to it, but it basically flattens the cuticle, and that hair cuticle stays flat, and they obtain length. So that's one, but you really don't need it. You could actually achieve the same goals by using the actual moisturizer and sealing it with the oil, and you wouldn't have a problem. So those are things that you want to think about. Those are good questions. Any more questions? I'll stop as we move along, and then I will answer them. Okay. All right. So let's talk about these things. We mentioned from an infant, and we talked about the friction. That's something that you find more with infants and toddlers. But let's talk about one of the big problems that we find with little girls. And that big problem is traction. If we look at most of the hairstyles, we want them neat, we want them, and I'm gonna put another link on here for y'all. We want them neat, we want them in place. And so, there's problems. There's problems with traction. So what happens, we end up finding ourselves pulling let's see if I could get that link. We actually find ourselves pulling that hairline and having this area so tight that when they lay down on these styles, and by the way, there are many moms, and I know moms, you're busy, grandmoms, whoever's taking care of the little girl, you're busy. What we find is that most of we will find that most of the children will sleep in these same styles for a week, and they just tie it down at night, and they get up every day, put the minimum amount of products on, and then they let them move on. This is not something that we're going to find that's going to be really helpful for the child's hairline. You will find that most of these children will suffer not only from traction breakage, that means short hairs around the hairline, but they also can suffer from something more serious, is traction alopecia. And that traction alopecia, unlike the friction alopecia, tends to be permanent once it's prolonged. And especially if you find your child consistently scratching or pulling at those areas, or you find that they experience a lot of pain, or you see a lot of redness or flaking, tenderness, that means that it's becoming more serious. So it's real important for you to be very careful with traction styles. So leaving them in ponytails, making sure their ponytails are not too tight. Those are very, very important. The other piece is making sure that you separate that hairline and you mold that hairline in place overnight. And that way you will not have that traction. So let me explain to you in a little bit more detail what I mean. If you're saying, I'm in a hurry, I'm not going to have a lot of time in the morning, I have several children, or I whatever the reason why, and right now we're all kind of shut in, so we don't have to worry about that as much. And we do want to talk about some styles and some things that you could do during the time that, and some helpful things to help you with your kids during this time. But I want to talk about, if you're going to dress their hair for bed, and especially now, you don't have to worry about the style as much, but even if you did, then what I recommend is you smooth the hair back into a loose plait. So that means you can get your entire hand underneath that plait all the way in the back. Separate the hairs around the hairline and around the neckline. Make the loose plait, get your hand under the base. So if your plait stops here, you get your hand under that base so that you can make sure that there's not going to be any traction when they sleep. So in other words, it's not pulling. And then you take that hair with your moisturizer and smooth it flat. Then you tie it down. We have, let's see, one of our little head wraps. And this has the micro fiber. So it has those holes, the small tiny holes, and then it will fit around, see that long tie, because they will have a small head, so it will fit. And then we recommend this for shorter hair and for longer hair. And then you let them wear that to bed. So they have tools. They have the actual head wrap, the nylon head wrap. They will have their leave-in conditioner, their hair vitamin, their moisturizer, and their oil. And that's a quick and easy. The other thing that I want to say to you is it's time to put our little girls in the mirror and our little boys, because we need them to learn how to take care of their own hair. And I'm going to tell you, you'll be amazed. Now, my daughters, I started them at 9. So tweens are really the ones, they're trying to make decisions on what they wear. They're trying to make decisions on everything. They're just interesting. And so it's cute as ever, but it's important for you to get them involved. I can guarantee you they will learn. You'll be amazed. And I've had many parents will say to me, my daughter will not let me forget to use a certain product. My daughter will say, remember, we're not supposed to do this, or remember, we're not supposed to do that. So once you teach them, they will remember. So get them in the mirror. When they're smaller, when they're a toddler, you're just basically showing them their little brain. My daughter used to stare at us when we would speak, and we didn't understand why. She stared, and she would just stare. It was weird. But when she started talking faster than her sister, and she's just, she would just talk. But the same with them with their hair. You put them in the mirror and you talk about how beautiful they are, how beautiful their hair is, and I want you to watch mommy do your hair. You put them in the mirror with a little bench or chair, and then you get on a stool that's a little higher, and you just do their hair. Try to do this as much as possible. Matter of fact, in their room or in a room, make sure that you have a space where they know that's their go-to space to have their hair done. And then you start doing the positive things, the habits, the building up the habits. How do I comb my hair? What do I do? How do I get my hair to look smooth? And how do I do all these things? And they will learn from you. And before you know it, they'll turn around and say, Mom, can I do it today? And then you go, okay, well, let me watch you. And you watch them, and if they have it, good. If they don't, you adjust things. Okay, so now let's get to the hair. All right, so there's a couple of things we want to pay attention to first is tools, what you're going to use on their hair. Or am I going to brush their hair? Am I going to comb their hair? If I'm going to comb their hair, what comb is good? If I brush, what brush should I brush? Should I comb? What should I do? Remember, some of the same things you've learned about your own hair, you will learn and understand and use on your children's hair. Okay? So first thing I have something in my office or my analysis room called the wrong box. I was trying to think of the name to call it, and it's just wrong. I kept saying, this is just wrong. And that's what I named it. And in that box, in that basket, it's a basket now. It's a little bigger because I've collected many things over the years. There are several things that are in there. And one of the categories is combs. And some of the things that I know that it's going to be bad for the hair. The first one I'm going to show you is this. It's, this little pick. This is bad because it could stick and scratch the scalp. You don't want to use this. Also, this one, let me get it closer. So what you see are these little teeth here, and these teeth have little ridges, and that's a problem, okay? That's a problem. These teeth are close together, and as they're down at the base, I've been in this industry for many, many years, and I've never understood why they have these little teeth with the ridges there. I've never understood that because they're dangerous and they cause tears on the hair. So wrong because this is metal, and wrong because those little teeth and they're close together and they have ridges. Even if you have really short hair, you don't want to use this one. Use just one that they have the small teeth, but they do not have the ridges. Okay, this is another one. Broken teeth. There's combs, and I love my large tooth combs too. If there's broken teeth, that's a problem. Because if you look at the base of the broken teeth area, there's always a little tail. Let's see if I can get that close enough in the light. There's always a little bit of a ridge here, and that pulls and tears the hair. And same here. That's a problem. So no broken teeth combs. And then also there's another type that some like to use. It's like a claw, and then it went into what we call the hand claw. And this one has these sharp ridges. Anything, even if it's plastic, if it has sharp ridges on it, it's real important. You don't want to use that on your child's hair. Okay, now the other tool that many use, we've been using it for years, is the brush. Okay, first we have to decide why we're using a brush, because that will help you clear a lot of things. You'll know, well, do I even need a brush? Why am I using it? Well, most cases, especially with little girls, we're using a brush so that we can smooth the hairline. Well, a brush causes ridges and tears in the hairline. My husband's looking in the door. Hi, husband.
The right one is mine, the small one.
The small one is yours. He is so funny. He's so funny, I just can't tell you. He wants to know what food on the stove is his. Because I'm vegetarian, vegan vegetarian, and he is not. So he is just, but anyway, a little sidetrack. But he came in my door. He never does that. So I guess he's hungry. Okay, so let's talk about brushes. What happens with brushes when you're trying to smooth that area on the hairline? Most of us will use, or most of you use, bristle brushes. Little nylon bristles, those bristles, and they have the little pointed teeth, and you use them to brush the hair. When you're using those brushes, what you're doing is creating little tears. If you took a piece of paper and you took a pen and you slid down that paper on top of the paper, what you're going to find is every other little spot of that is going to create a tear. And if that tear is there, then what you're going to find is that you are going to create the microscopic tears on the hair shaft or strand, and that is going to cause a problem with elasticity. And if you have a problem with elasticity, you'll find those hairline hairs really short all the time, all throughout. So in addition to the traction we spoke about earlier, you're going to find that. Also through the strands, you're going to find what we call chronic split ends. That means you're going to see those hairs, instead of them laying flat, you're now trying to use gel, and we're going to talk about products in a minute, to help to lay the hair down and cause dehydration and all the other problems that gel causes. So you want to make sure that you are not brushing. You want to use how do I get my child's hair to lay flat? I've got a video link, and I'm just trying to see it. It was not pulling up on my website just a minute ago, but let's see if we can pull this up. And it's on hair nutrition for little girls of color. And I'm going to pull it up and see if I can get it. I've got it on YouTube as well, but for some reason it wasn't showing up on my site. So I want to give you some tips on pulling up, let's see, Lisa Akbari. And by the way, any video that you want, I have over 700, what do I mean? Videos on YouTube, over 800, so I quit counting. But you can find those videos on YouTube, and they will be able to help you on whatever. If you type in Lisa Akbari and then that video.
Hi, I'm Lisa Akbari.
Okay, hold on.
Doctor.
Lisa Akbari. Okay, so I'm going to send you who says little girls? Okay, I'm going to send you a link, and this link is going to, you can click on that link and you'll see me working with a little girl. She's about 9 years old, but she's got extremely kinky hair, which is what we want you want to always the most dominant hair. Everything else is pretty easy from there. You can click on that, and then you'll be able to look at me actually working with this little girl's hair and showing you techniques. It's about 30 minutes long, so take the time and have your little girl with you looking at it. And it's Tamara. She's a really sweet young lady. She's a lot older now, because this video, I think I did this video. When did we do this one? Back in, I'm not sure. Usually I'll see it. But I had about almost 2,300 viewers. So people really wanted to see this one. And we have a lot of interest in little girls and their hair and how do we solve it. Okay, so solve the problems or the challenges. All right, so again, this is really simple. It's pretty straightforward. I know that there's no magic or silver bullet. I know that there's a lot you want to learn about their hairstyles, and I'm open to, I have a program, or actually a private class I can do with you. It's mommy and me, daddy and me, whoever. It could be grandmom and me, and it's just information on you, a private one-on-one, and we could do a virtual one, or we could do one that's face-to-face. Once we get out of this pandemic, then this is going to help us a lot. But I really want you to ask the care questions. Okay, so we talked about brushing. So how do I smooth that hair? What you want to remember is, if you're going to smooth the hair, you want to use your hair vitamins first, which is our leave-in conditioner. Use your moisturizer and your oil, and you apply it from ear to ear, front to back. Again, starting at the ends, hair close to the scalp, and then you go down the hair shaft. Smooth it with your hands first, flat. Once you smooth it with your hands, you can take a comb. Now, with that comb, you can take, and you want to use a comb that, depending on the length of hair, you want to use a comb that is going to give you enough control to where you're not pulling the hair. But in this case, you're going to flatten it with a comb you have. You can use, if this is really long hair, large tooth comb. then more of a medium, and then a smaller, but it's still larger than you would with a rat tail comb, or the comb that here, the smaller, very small teeth. Okay, well, there are no flips and turns, not rocket science, but I know that you guys have questions about your daughter's hair, and I want to help you with that. So if you're going to use the large tooth, you lay it on its side, and this is in a raking motion. You take your hand and you take the comb, your comb leads and smooth. And basically, I don't have the comb turned up. If you can see, I don't have it turned up. I have it turned on its side, and I'm raking and smoothing, raking and smoothing. Once you smooth that completely back, then you're ready to apply a small amount, an additional amount of your moisture and your oil, and then you smooth it, and remember, you tie it down. And that stays down overnight. And then in the morning, you're ready. So these are this is how you smooth back the hair. And you could do it for yourself as an adult or for your children. Okay. All right, so let's move on to, I talked about the brushing and combing. Let's talk about combing the hair. So let's see, I think we had a question. No, okay. Let's talk about combing the hair. If you are going to comb your daughter's hair, you, in many cases, depending on the length of hair, you want to make sure that you are not pulling the hair. You do not take the hair, and I'm going to use this comb as an example. You do not take the hair and comb down through the hair. You do not take the hair on the ends and rake the hair, because most ladies will say, well, I'm very careful. I use a large tooth comb and I start at the ends and I'm working my way up. Now, initially, many years ago, I thought that you could carefully comb through the hair that way. I said, okay, you can carefully rake through the tangles. What we found in studies is that there were microscopic tears. Moms had problems with children obtaining length, and it was really a horrible situation. And when I looked at that study closely, I found that it is best to detangle as you would with an adult and anyone else, allow your products to do the work. So if there's a tangle, we have the hydrating detangling souffle, and that's online. And let's see if I can get that link for you. And that is one of the most powerful tools that I find on our website to help with tangles, because this is something that if you have a child that's got problems with tangles, then I recommend that. We also have programs for little girls. So there's a program for little girls, and you can use that. So please spend some time on that page so that you know more about what's recommended for your child's hair, and then ask specific questions about her hair, and even with little boys, and then I'll be more than happy to answer those for you. Okay, so let's look at support products and see if I can find that link and send that link to you. Yeah, here it is, right here. And excuse me. It's a really good product for tangles. I had one patient to say, it literally melts my tangles. And this is true. I call it the cheat product, because it's a way to cheat. But because you can actually detangle your hair. First, I believe in not creating tangles. And then if you don't create them, then you don't have to detangle them. So, those are my beliefs about tangles. You guys are awfully quiet, but I have no problem with you being quiet, because that means you are learning. I know that so many of you are interested in talking more about styles, but because of all the problems that I'm hearing and seeing, I have little girls that suffer with alopecia. Um, I have little girls that suffer with chronic alopecia, meaning baldness, little girls that suffer with chronic breakage. The parent will believe that the hair will not grow. So there's so much going on with the hair that I think that these things on taking care of the hair, and again, think about your child's hair like you would your own. You need to make sure that you have certain things in place. So let's dig a little bit deeper into how do we care for our little girls' hair. Number one question was, how often do I shampoo? How often do I condition? Shampooing, depending on how active they are. If you have a swimmer, and it's really the same as it will be your hair. If you have a swimmer, you need to shampoo daily, at least 7 to, I would say 7 to 10 hours. And that varies. It depends on the hair, the length of hair, to how long, after they've shampooed, after they come out of the water, the chlorine. And even if they swim in the ocean or lake, it's even more crucial because all of the bacteria and the things that you're going to find, the microorganisms that are in the waters. The other thing is you want to shampoo if they're not that active, you want to make sure you're shampooing inside of 7 days. If they're not that active, if their hair seems to be stable, for the most part, no real scalp problems, then at least once a week. Once every 4, 5, 6, or 6 to 7 days, not every 8, 9, 10. And I know one of the rules for a lot of women with their daughters is to shampoo every 2 weeks, but that's not what I recommend at all. The other thing is you want to look at if they are dance or in sports, you want to make sure that you are shampooing their hair every 3 to 4 days. Real important. All right, and then the conditioning. You can do a lot of 60-second conditioning for their hair. That is not a problem. You can definitely do that. So 60-second conditioning is not a problem. That's what I would highly recommend for your little girl's hair. Let's see, questions. Anybody have any questions? Okay, and with combing and detangling, I mentioned not to comb down through the tangles. Shampooing, the same thing. You're making sure you're under the hair. If there's any length, smoothing outside and then smoothing straight down on top of the hair instead of pushing the hair against the head, because you will have issues with tangles if you do that. Okay. All right. So, all right, ladies, and I think there's a couple of guys or two. You can ask me about anything that you want to ask me about. It seems like you guys got it together as it relates to your children's hair. True or not true? Because I'm not getting a lot of questions. And again, and we don't have as many participants as we normally have, but things are busy, and people are doing all kinds of things and learning things. I mentioned that we want to make sure that we are putting our children in front of a mirror while we're styling their hair. I think that's crucially important. And the reason why I mention that is because they need to learn how to take care of their own hair. Like I said, I started my daughters really early. They were about 9, I think, when they really first started shampooing. But I always remember whatever age you get to the point where you say, okay, I think they've learned enough, they can do this, then you need to check behind everything. You have them go in, shampoo, come out, let you check it. Go in and condition, come out, let you check. What are you checking for? You're making sure their scalp and hair is clean. You're also making sure their hair and scalp is, their hair is conditioned properly. And then you're ready to style. And then again, you put them in the mirror and you work with them. You teach them how to apply their hair products. This is what I'm going to do first. This is what I'm going to do second. And you go through those steps. And then you teach them how to comb their hair. You teach them when it's proper. You teach them the correct types of combs to use. You teach them about their hair. They have lots of questions about why can't I wear my hair like this? My friend, her friend may have straight hair. She may have kinky hair. Her friend may have a relaxer. She may have naturally kinky hair. You have to talk to them. The most important thing is to speak with them. Continue to talk to them about how beautiful their hair is. Because if you don't, and I talk about this in my book, Black Woman's Guide to Beautiful Hair, if you do not speak to them about their hair and what they're going through and some of the things that you really need, you can answer, some of the questions you can answer, then you're going to have a child growing up that may or may not like her hair. And they will find ways to continuously put weave in. Now, wigs, not a bad option, but you want your child to fall in love with their hair before they start changing their hair. So you don't want them to go through life hating their hair, because it's going to come from you. So you have to teach them. So those are things that are really important. And I think that I've noticed on television, and I'm watching how moms, and because I don't have small children, I'm thinking, wow, these moms and dads really have to get creative as it relates to their kids. So this is one thing you can do. You can have a hair day. You can have a dress up day so that you and your children are there. Today, we're going to have a dress up day, or say Wednesday, we're going to have a dress up day, for example. And then they'll have something to look forward to. We'll put it on their little calendar, create a calendar. And that calendar can have the dress up day on there. And that day, they get to choose what they want to wear. They get to choose the hairstyle online. And then you and y'all can create that hairstyle. You can explain to them, this is not good and this is why. Those types of things. So there's lots you can do, but then you always teach them the safe way. And they're learning from you. If they don't learn from you, they're going to learn from somebody else. And then you're really going to be in trouble. Maybe be in trouble. Okay. The other thing is you want to have a calendar for how you want their hair maintenance. This on the calendar. So 7 days in the week. On day one, that may be the day we shampoo our hair, on Mondays or on Saturdays or Sundays, Sunday evenings or whatever. That may be our shampoo day. And then what do we do with our hair every night? How do we dress our hair for bed? Those little steps that you know that's going to happen every night before you go to bed, so nobody's surprised that they have to do these things to their hair before they go to bed. Then you talk about what do we do in the morning when we get up. So with our hair, what do we do to our hair? What do we do to our scalp? What you're doing is you're giving them some good habits. You're creating this pattern of how you take care of your hair. And if you do that, then you're going to have less problems with your children growing up with hair and scalp problems. I can guarantee you, if you give them steps on how often they should shampoo, the techniques on how to shampoo and condition, if you give them techniques on how to comb their hair, what's safe, what's not safe, and again, I'm only an email away and I can help you with all of this, then you're going to find that there is going to be a lot better and fuller heads of hair. And we will grow up as little sisters of color, and we will grow up learning how to take care of our hair. Or little girls, whether it's multi-color, multi-texture, multi-type hair, they will learn to respect their hair. So that's important. We're almost out of time. Did we have any last minute questions that you may? And I put several links up there. So if you have any more questions, I want to give you the floor. And if I've omitted anything. And again, like I said, this is not rocket science. There's not like something that you have to be concerned about as it relates to taking care of your daughter's hair. It's not far from what you would do with your own hair. So I don't want you to worry about that either. We've talked about combs, the proper combs. We've talked about techniques. We've talked about brushes. Should I use it? How do I smooth the hair if I don't? We've talked about many things today, but I really want to make sure that we deal with any of your last minute questions. Okay. All right. But we're a minute away. What I want to do is talk to you a little bit about what's going to be our next session. And again, this was by far the smallest group, but it was a good group, a consistent group. And so I thank you guys so much for this. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to, let's take a look. Our next show is, and I'm pretty excited about this one. I want to make sure that you are as well. Okay, so we're going to talk about hair loss again. And the hair loss breaks up into a lot of series, but there's medication and hair loss. I think it's real important that we understand about this problem. I think it's a big deal for a lot of people, and they tend to blame all their hair loss on medication. But there's some direct and indirect ways that we lose hair with medication. So email me your medications that you have. Email the names of them and why you're taking that particular medication. And then I'll do some background on that medication and I'll be ready. And then we may have someone, if we can, and if we can't, we won't, someone to help us with a little bit of that. So there's just a lot that we can do. So I'm excited about that show. Until next time, I love you guys. To God be the glory in Jesus. You have a blessed, wonderful rest of your day. I lose track of the days. Do y'all do that? Oof, it's like, what time is it? What day is it? Yeah. But I'm really thankful that you guys have tuned in today. And if you missed, we're trying to fix that problem with the links being on our site, but I'm going to find a way to get all that fixed. And I will see you on, this is Tuesday, I'll see you on Thursday. And when we talk about medication and hair loss. All right, you have a blessed, wonderful evening. I love you so much. All right, thank you guys.